Hi team. So this is a presentation about protein. If you have done the lifestyle challenge before, you will know how much we harp on about this macronutrient. And you will also probably by now know how important it is and why we harp on about it. So this will be a little bit of a recap for those who have been here before. And for those who are new to this challenge, it should help you understand what it is all about, why it's so important, why we specifically concentrate on protein in our diets, and hopefully then make it easy to understand why, where to get it from, and how it should make you feel and what it should do for you in the long run without any of these goals on this challenge. So protein, what is it all about? So protein is everywhere throughout the body, muscles, bones, skin, hair, and virtually every other body part or tissue. So that includes all of our organs and all those parts of us that keep us alive. So protein is in all of those and therefore is needed to maintain all of those parts of our body. It makes up the enzymes that power many chemical reactions and the hemoglobin that carries oxygen in your blood. Therefore, it is clear how essential it is to our survival. And that just based on us living, regardless of trying to make any changes or improvements on top of survival. There are at least 10,000 different proteins, and each one of these come together to make us what we are and keep us that way. So protein is made from building blocks called amino acids. You may well have heard of these. You can have aminos in drinks as a way of obviously getting those amino acids into us, because again, they are building blocks that help improve our protein content and get protein into the body. We don't store amino acids. Our bodies make them in two ways, either from scratch, and so therefore the rest of them need to come from our food. So whilst we can make a majority of them, there are 9 others that we have to consume in order to get them into our body. So that starts to give us an idea as to why protein is so essential, because those 9 amino acids that are listed there are essential for our bodies, and we can only get them from our food. Okay. So 5 reasons why we need to make sure we are getting enough protein every day. Number 1 is to build. Protein is an important building block of bones, muscles, cartilage, skin. In fact, every single thing on the body is pretty much composed mostly of protein. So in order to maintain what we have, to repair, then we need to make sure we have protein. But number 2 touches on that with repair. It uses it to build and repair tissue. This will become an important part we'll discuss a little bit later. So certainly, whichever group you're in for Lifestyle Challenge, protein is important, but certainly in the muscle build performance group, you'll understand there that protein is essential to being successful in those areas, as without protein, we cannot build and repair tissue. Therefore, we cannot build muscle, we cannot get stronger, we cannot improve that element of our cells, of our makeup. Number 3, oxygenate. So red blood cells contain a protein compound that covers oxygen throughout the body. This helps supply your body with the nutrients it needs. Again, essential to survival. Yeah, it's you don't have to understand the science behind it massively to understand that just that alone, without protein, then we cannot get oxygen throughout the body. 4, digest. Half the dietary protein that you consume each day goes into making enzymes, which aid in digesting food, making new cells and body chemicals. Again, without being too technical, protein is needed just for basic functions such as digesting food, making new cells, and maintaining our bodily systems. And then regulate, number 5, plays an important role in hormone regulation, especially during the transformation and development of cells during puberty. So even at a young age, we need to make sure protein is being consumed in sufficient amounts. Bodies have a lot going on as they're growing, and so protein is needed for so many of those elements there. And on top of that, hormones, which is going to affect everyone differently, but again, is needed in order to function efficiently. So on that note, we can already see that protein has a lot of functions before we even look at the training side of it. So the protein we take in needs to assist with all of those jobs there. So we need to make sure we consume enough protein to allow it to do the job properly, just functioning our bodies to the best of their ability into keeping us alive and sustainability for ourselves. So like I said, this is before we even start adding training and things in, where we then expect our bodies to do a lot more. Okay, so that is the basic requirements of protein. Sources of protein, two main food groups that contribute. We've got our lean meat and poultry, our fish, eggs, tofu, nuts, seeds, and that kind of group there. And then number two is our milk, yogurt, cheese alternatives, which is mostly reduced fat group. There are now a lot more foods out there that fundamentally are advertised as higher in protein. Protein is in most foods, and as with anything else, some foods have got more protein in than others. So when we're focusing on our protein intake in this challenge, there will be a lot of talk about where you can get your protein from, how you can mix it up. It can get a little bit tedious having the same foods all the time, and then that can kind of be a limiting factor in how successful we are at consuming it. So there'll be a lot of talk about where you can get it from, sharing information, sharing recipes, and finding what works for you to try and get that protein in. For example, to increase muscle mass in combination with physical activity. So this isn't just to allow our bodies to function and to train. In order to increase muscle mass, if you are in the performance group where you're looking to increase muscle mass, it's recommended that a person that trains regularly, so you're looking at maybe 5 times a week, eats between 1.5 and 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Okay, so that is how much protein is needed per day in order to sustain your bodily functions, to make sure that we are recovering, repairing, and building just from normal tasks, to also allow us to train up to 5 times a week. And on top of that, to then try and build muscle. Now, obviously, as a body works, it is never going to prioritize the protein intake for what we want it to. So if we're sat there and we haven't hit our protein intake, your body doesn't care that you're worried about your biceps. It is not going to think, do you know what? Let's let the liver have a day off today. We won't bother repairing, looking after that. We'll chuck it on the biceps. It is always going to do what is needed for bodily survival. So in order to even begin to build muscle mass, the protein has to have been completed everywhere else. And whatever is left over is what will then go to increase muscle mass. So it kind of gives you an idea as to why we go on about how important it is to get a lot of protein in to hit these numbers. It's because you can't just have a small amount of protein and you tell it where to go. It is always going to prioritize bodily survival. And the leftover will do the bit then that you want it to do. But without any leftover, it is not going to prioritize it. Okay, so some practical protein equivalents in common foods. And again, there's a few things written there, team, and it does change regularly. And, you know, there are websites there where if you just go onto Google and type in high protein foods, there are now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages out there dedicated to how to increase your protein intake. There are bars, there are shakes, there's squashes, there are foods, even cereal that will have extra protein, high protein Weetabix, high protein shreddies, you name it. The importance of protein, I think, is finally creeping through, but it's also become a marketing tool as well. Given that said, it's not a bad thing. Obviously, if you enjoy your Weetabix and you're happy to pay £2 more for your Weetabix to get your protein in and it works for you, then don't mock it. At the end of the day, to get your protein in, what we do recommend is you try and add a little bit across the day rather than getting to the end of the day and thinking, I've had no protein, and sitting there and just thinking that chewing on chicken breast is gonna hit the spot. It's gonna get very tedious. And we want it to be sustainable. So we are looking at trying to increase our protein intake across the day rather than having to cram it all in one meal, because we haven't really got to grips with it. But those are a few examples of what foods are high in protein. A cup of cottage cheese always blows my mind, 26 grams of protein. Such a simple way to get protein in, low calories as well. Chuck in some other stuff with it, chuck it into a recipe. There you are, 26 grams of protein before you even have to worry. That's a great one. But there will be lots of sharing and conversations in the group about how you can get this protein in. And also, if you have any, do please feel free to share them for everyone. So it's got a bit here just about protein and building muscle specifically, so protein synthesis. In order to build muscle and strength, you need to consume more protein than your body breaks down naturally doing resistance training or weightlifting. So we've already spoken about protein keeping our cells alive, keeping our organs, hair, nails, skin, everything else as it should be. We then start adding in some weight training, because obviously we know that once we kind of do weight training, that's what causes the effect of our muscles to technically rip, and it's that rebuild and repair that builds a muscle. Again, if we don't have enough protein, those muscles are not going to get repaired, and then we're going to end up obviously with breaking down with injuries and muscle fatigue where we haven't got the correct nutrients in order to build them back up. So again, you can train all the will in the world, but if you have not got the right nutrients in, you cannot outtrain a bad diet, okay? So without having the fuel in there, it's physically impossible for that body to do what you want it to do if it hasn't got the fuel there. There has been a bit of discussion over the best time to consume protein for optimal muscle growth. Quite often you'll see people that finish training, they get a protein shake in. It used to be that it was, within 20 minutes straight away after training, you'd have to down your protein shake. Probably the last thing you want after some sessions is to have anything if you're feeling a bit sick and a little bit lactic acid creeping in there. They now say between 15 and 60 minutes after exercise. So if you can get some protein in after you have trained, then it's just a good time to kind of get the body fed when it needs it most, when these muscles are tired and they have been working hard, as well as the rest of your body. Getting the protein in there is kind of optimal to have the best effect of taking protein. And whether that's a supplement, a shake, or if you're going to have a meal and it's got your protein in, again, protein supplements are great. You've got protein squash, you've got your protein shakes. In an ideal world, we would get our protein from foods alone. But one, that's not always possible if you don't feel like it. It's not always the most convenient if we're not able to grab something that is that high in protein at a time. And also, it can be more expensive sometimes to have to get food. So whilst in the ideal world, it would come from food, there is a lot to be said for these protein supplements, and it is a convenient way, but it is also a good way to get that protein in. We don't want it to be totally reliant, but as a supplement on top of what we're eating, then it's definitely worth it. When you're looking at our nutritional plan when it comes to the Lifestyle Challenge, it may well be that you get to the end of the day and you're a little bit short, and it'll be things like, do you know what, have a yogurt, put some protein powder in, have a protein squash, having some cereal that's high in protein, having some overnight oats with protein powder, whatever it is, as becomes your go-to or your little top up to make sure you're hitting those numbers that we'll be giving you. So supplements, they do work, but not solely on their own. We want to make sure we are getting some good natural protein in from our foods. So protein after exercising, like I said, it used to be pretty quick, but now just get some in. If you've got anything up to 2 hours after workout, we'll still build that muscle mass, providing you're still hitting your protein goals, okay? So don't worry about rolling around the floor and having to crawl to your protein shake to get it down as soon as possible, thinking it'd be wasted otherwise. Though there is that kind of increase now to a 2 hour window if needed. 15 to 60 minutes kind of used to be the norm, so if you can get it in then, great. Tends to point to it being a little bit more successful. So muscle mass itself is built when the protein balance is positive, okay? So that's when the protein synthesis exceeds the muscle protein breakdown. So you're breaking down your muscles and you're putting more protein back in than you're losing. So that is when we are getting our muscle gain, which is what in that performance group we were looking at if you're trying to add muscle. And don't get me wrong, it is hard, okay? When you get some of these numbers and you look at what you're already hitting, and then we come back to you and say, yeah, that's great, but now we need you to eat 4 times the amount of protein, it can be a lot. And the coach that's working with you will very much guide you on how to do that and how to do it bit by bit. You're not looking to jump in 2 feet and just overdose on protein. It takes a little while for your body to adjust to it, for your digestive system to accept it, and also for you to feel great. It's all very well if you're hitting these amazing protein goal numbers, but you actually feel like crap on it. You feel lethargic. Your body doesn't feel like training because you've kind of made too many changes too soon. So do listen to your body. But I'm sure people who have done the challenge before will back me up and say 99% sure that most of you will not be eating enough protein. Okay. So recommended protein intake after exercise is 0.2 to 0.5 per kilogram body weight. Again, don't worry too much about these numbers. As with any nutrition information, it can get a little bit overwhelming. Some of this stuff is for people who might be a little bit more geeky in it and want to know a few more bits of information. But ultimately, let your coach who is guiding you through the challenge worry about things like this. They will calculate the numbers for you. They will discuss it with you. They will explain why those numbers work for you. You can always do a little bit of research into it. What I find is you start looking at one thing, the next thing you're 4 hours deep into the internet. You've given up every food that's green and you're only eating orange foods on a Monday, yellow foods on a Wednesday, and it all becomes a little bit overwhelming. Okay, so try and just bit by bit understand why you're doing it, because it's more likely to be sustainable if you can see the benefits of it. And don't overcomplicate it. There is no need, okay? This is supposed to be improving your current situation, your current training regime, how you feel about yourself, how your life-work balance is. It's not about making things more difficult that 2 weeks in, it just becomes unsustainable and is causing more stress. It's not about that, okay? So by all means, have a little read around the subject, but please don't go too deep and end up following fad diets that are left, right and centre. We're going to keep it simple, and it is what it is. So protein for life, we've already touched on how important it can be for youngsters around hormone changes and puberty. The other side of that is from around 50 years of age. So humans begin to gradually lose skeletal muscle. Okay, so we know that around 50, that skeletal muscle starts to break down. Common in older people then, and obviously that loss of muscle mass can lead to injuries. Obviously, you know, we've all probably had relatives or friends where we've seen as they get older, they fall, and that fractured hip then becomes life-changing rather than bouncing back after some bed rests and physio. All of a sudden, they're never out of bed, they're never mobile. It has a massive, massive effect. And so I think we're a lot more aware of it now with people living until they're older, which is great. But I think most people agree that they would rather live till they're older and not just exist. It's great, isn't it, if, you know, people live in 80, 90 and they're still self-sufficient and they're able to live on their own and have a good quality of life, rather than their bodies have kind of given up on them. And this can massively be down to poor diet. Granted, there's plenty of other elements in it, I appreciate, with illnesses and things like that, but we do know that a poor diet and inactivity are a massive cause that can lead to you know, this loss of muscle mass and then illness, injury, and you know, a breakdown in current life situations as they get older. So meeting the daily recommended protein may help you maintain muscle mass and strength. Okay, so by having that protein as soon as you can, so that it becomes the norm, then you are able to maintain that muscle mass and your strength, therefore allowing you to maintain your ability to walk, reduce your risk of injury from falls, to recover from injuries, and to improve your quality of life for longer. Again, it's that living, not existing kind of principle. To maintain muscle mass, it's important for older people to eat protein effectively. So this means that, you know, having the high quality protein foods that are easily digestible and have protein that can get straight to work, basically, you know, that doesn't have to be broken down and doesn't have to be kind of produced in a way of supplements. They just want a bit of protein in them that's good in their food and their body can utilize immediately in order to improve its effectiveness and to give them that quality of life. So that is a bit about protein, team. Like I said, it is massively important. And if you have done the challenge before, you will be maybe sick of hearing about protein. But I'm hoping from those slides, it gives you a little bit of an idea as to why it is important. The biggest thing that I would definitely take away from it is, you know, if you're on this challenge, you're in the gym, you're training, you want to improve yourself, and not necessarily competitively, but just quality of life and longevity of life. You know, you want to reduce your injuries, your illnesses. You may have, you know, other personal factors as to why you've decided to do this. But what hopefully you will take away from this is why protein is so important. There is plenty of talk around fats and carbohydrates, they're the macronutrients as well. But I think most of us would probably agree that protein is the one that's probably misunderstood the most, and actually is pretty busy, is pretty essential to everything. So I'm hoping from this presentation, you will take away the fact that, yeah, we need to be hitting our proteins. And when we give you those numbers and we give you your targets, you will now understand why it is that that's so important. And hopefully it will be the macronutrient that has the biggest impact really going forward on whatever it is your goals are in this lifestyle challenge and going forward. If you do have any more questions, please grab hold of me in the gym, message me, email me, whatever you want to do. If there's some bits that you've got personal concerns or personal questions over, I'm happy to answer them. Again, have a little read around it on the internet. Just avoid those fad diets with the multicolored rainbow diets, okay? Keep it simple, keep it nice and simple, something that you can stick to, something that's sustainable, and see how it goes, and we make changes as we go along. But that's what we're all here for. So good luck in your challenge, and I will see you all soon.